All right, man, peace. So as we near the close of this current 2017-2018 NBA regular season, Mr. Russell Westbrook is aiming for his second consecutive season of averaging a triple-double. And it also seems as if he may believe that there are some stakes in the MVP race for himself as well. He was recently asked by a group of reporters who he felt like the leader is in regards to the MVP race. And although at the end he is going to digress and acknowledge that James Harden is the clear-cut leader, he spends a lot of time meandering about who he thinks should be the MVP and not really wanting to fess up in regards to who his favorite is until the very end, because it's very clear that James Harden should be the NBA MVP for this season. But Russell Westbrook, to me, he's like an annoying little brother. You know, you love him to death, but you can't be around him too much because, you know, if you live with him, y'all going to end up fighting all the time. And that seems to be the rapport that he has with many of his teammates. You can tell that his teammates love him, but the more talented teammates that he has can't stay with him very long because he's like a black hole. He just sucks everything into him. And Carmelo Anthony, I've also described as a black hole. So I think even Carmelo is shocked at the level of magnetic power that Russell Westbrook has to just make everyone just orbit around him, as opposed to him being a part of a functional team. Really, when you're in OKC, when you're a member of that team, you're just a part of the Russell Westbrook show. That's how he likes it, and that's how it's always going to be. And why do I say that? Because that's consistent with someone who would have a hard time acknowledging who the leader is in the MVP race this season, as if to imply that for him to admit something that someone else would deserve other than him would be divesting a certain level of authority in the NBA to that person. Russell's that type of guy. He just doesn't want to admit that anyone else is good at anything because he thinks that he'll be giving them a psychological advantage. But anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
I'm not sure. You know, obviously he's having a good year. A great year. The team had the best record in the NBA. So.
Do you have a pick for MVP since you're the reigning MVP?
No, I don't have a pick. There's a lot of guys doing a lot of great things in the league. Honestly, you know, I don't know kind of what you go off of because MVP's kind of been picked differently every year. So,
well, you didn't mind how they picked it last year.
Depends kind of what the criteria, what it is that you guys vote for.
My criteria for who should be the MVP of the NBA has always pretty much been consistent. For me, it's the best player having a transcendent season on a team with hopefully the best record. But if he's not on a team with the best record, it should be on a team that has a very, very good record.
Obviously, he's leading the charge at the moment.
All right, you just heard Russell Westbrook praising James Harden, but he didn't quite give him the ringing endorsement for the MVP all the way. Stephen A., I'm going to use your word. How disrespectful was this to Harden?
I say very.
I think that it's pretty disrespectful also, especially in light of the fact that they're former teammates and supposedly good friends. But I think that Russell sees the possibility, the probability in his mind that they're going to have to face the Houston Rockets in the second round. And he does not want to give them a psychological advantage. He doesn't want to give James a psychological advantage.
Now, that doesn't mean that Russell Westbrook doesn't have love and respect for his brother, his former teammate James Harden, who Oklahoma City should have never lost, who Clay Bennett should have come an additional $4 million out of his pocket. $4 million total out of his pocket to keep in Oklahoma City. It doesn't negate that. And I'm only playing around because it's not like Russell Westbrook was intending to be disrespectful. He just is who he is. He ain't trying to give anybody but so much love.
Absolutely. But still, come on, Russ. You got the MVP last year. James Harden is the leader of a team that's almost 20 wins ahead of yours. You can give him a little love. You can give him a little shout out and say this is James' year in regards to the regular season. I mean, damn.
And unless they on his team, that's how Russell Westbrook rolls. But I will say this. James Harden is averaging 30. 8.7 assists per game, over 5 rebounds per game, shoot 45% from the field. Houston has the best record in the entire NBA. They have been an absolute model of consistency. He's played 71 of the 80 to 81 games this year. He's been absolutely sensational from start to finish. Plus, he's been a leader on this squad as well. He deserves a hell of a lot more appreciation and a hell of a lot more respect. And oh, by the way, even while competing against Russell Westbrook last year for league MVP honor,
he should have won it last year. This really should be James Harden's second straight year winning the regular season MVP award, because he should have won it last year. At least if you're one who believes that he and Westbrook were the two preeminent favorites for the MVP award last year. Just going by my criteria, I thought that either KD or Steph Curry should have won it last year. But if it had gone to James Harden, I wouldn't have minded so much, because that team won over 50 games. I believe that they won 55 or 56 games last year. The Houston Rockets did, prior to Chris Paul coming there. That's why I thought James Harden should have won it over Westbrook. I'm not someone who believes in giving a player a regular season MVP award just because he's put up gaudy stats. Please keep in mind that in the season that Michael Jordan averaged 37 a game and had over 200 steals and 100 blocks in that same season, he did not win the MVP award. Magic Johnson won it. In the season that Kobe Bryant averaged 35 a game, he did not win the MVP award. In the season that Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double, he did not win the MVP award. The mainstream liberal sports media decided they were going to change the criteria for MVP to always, we feel so sorry for Westbrook because Durant left him and he also averaged a triple-double, so let's give him this award.
Honors, James Harden never failed to give his former teammate the kind of love that Russell Westbrook deserves.
I agree. That's why I'm stating it seems very strange to me that Westbrook cannot reciprocate. Because even though James Harden thought that he should have won the MVP award last season, at least he was one of the leading nominees. I think that even Westbrook understands, as delusional as he could be, that he's not one of the leading candidates this season, even though he tried to intimate or imply that he should be because of the numbers that he's putting up. That's why he said, well, it depends on the criteria that you guys are using because you change it every year. No, nigga. You know damn well that you have no business even trying to imply that you should be the regular season MVP this year. Just give your boy a little love. It's not that big a deal. By the time you face them in the playoffs, it's going to be a month from now. You can put all that shit to the side and you guys can go to war. It's not a huge deal to give him a little bit of a shout out. I mean, damn.
I know this because I interviewed James Harden, and he told me directly how proud he was of the job that Russell Westbrook did last year in the aftermath of Kevin Durant's departure, and what level of love and respect Russell Westbrook deserved from all of us, even while competing with him so closely for league MVP honors up until those last couple of weeks. So I look at it now, and it's like, wait a minute, the kind of year that James Harden is having right now, we got to step back and look at what this brother has done and recognize it for being as special as it is.
Look at Max Kellerman looking away when Stephen A. Smith said we have to recognize what James Harden has done, because Max Kellerman is a LeBron James super fan. Let me rewind it back just a little bit. Pay attention to Max Kellerman.
Now, we got to step back and look at what this brother has done and recognize it for being as special.
See how he looked away?
Special as it is. This man deserves league MVP without question.
Yes, without question, James Harden should be the league MVP. Now, LeBron James is going to steal some of his first place votes, and it wouldn't shock me if the voting is very close, because many of LeBron's more ardent supporters have started to come out in force in the last month to try to promote him, and LeBron, of course, has done a great job promoting himself. So it wouldn't shock me if the voting is close, but James Harden should win it.
And I think Russell Westbrook should have been one of the first to say that.
I agree.
It was disrespectful to LeBron James, the obvious MVP of the regular season as usual, of the NBA as usual.
Yes, the Peyton Manning of the NBA. The modern-day Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James.
Look, you can throw out James Harden's stats all you want, and I can counter with LeBron's. And some stats, James Harden has a slightly higher scoring average. They shoot the three about the same, but Harden takes more of them. LeBron will have more rebounds. Assists will be this way. The shooting field goal percentage go to LeBron. This one.
LeBron James super fans always want to inundate you with stats. Stats, stats, stats. Like the scriptures tell you, you shall know a tree by its fruit. The same way that LeBron James is all about accumulating stats, so are his fans in reciting stats. Stats, stats, stats. And don't get me wrong. Stats are relevant when you're trying to establish who is the most important player, who's the most valuable player in the NBA to his team. They're relevant, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, it's about how much of an effect did you have on your team's winning and losing. Now, a new argument that many of LeBron James' superfans are trying to use is that, well, James Harden has Chris Paul. Well, he didn't have Chris Paul last year, and his team won more games than LeBron James' team has won this year or last year. The Houston Rockets won at least 55 or 56 games in last year's regular season, and that was without Chris Paul. Now, they all want to give LeBron James all these accolades for winning the same amount of games this year as they won with Kyrie last year. All that's telling me is that they underachieved with Kyrie last year because LeBron James did not know how to properly utilize Kyrie, which Kyrie himself stated, which is why he forced a trade. Now LeBron gets to play all by himself and get all the glory, which is what his mini-me, Russell Westbrook, likes to do as well. You see how it all fits together?
Want to go to Harden, they'll be comparable in terms of on a per-game basis who's most valuable. But Harden's missed 8 games, LeBron has missed 0. So who?
Well, if Harden has missed 8 games and LeBron has missed 0, and the Houston Rockets are going to win 65, 66 games this season, and the Cleveland Cavaliers are only going to win 50 or 51 games, what that tells me is that when James Harden plays, his team is playing at such a high level that he could miss 8 games, and his team will still have a better record than LeBron James' team when LeBron is there for every game. So right there, you're proving that James Harden is more valuable to his team than LeBron is to his.
So who's more valuable? I mean, like, this is very simple.
I agree.
Even my eyeball test tells me LeBron's better than Harden. If anyone else sees something different, okay, the advanced stats say it's close enough that
doesn't always win the MVP.
But when one dude, LeBron in this case, on a per-game basis is better than the other dude, and he plays all the games and the other dude misses 8 games, I'm not giving James Harden the teammate award. He's the greatest player who also is on a great team.
I'm trying to figure out, how is James Harden the greatest player who's also on a great team when they only had one other all-star or all-star caliber player, that being Chris Paul, who missed a lot of time prior to the all-star break, and who has had his share of injuries even after the all-star break. I think that Max Kellerman is trying to conflate his argument with the Golden State Warriors because he's figuring, well, since the Houston Rockets have a better record than the Golden State Warriors, maybe I can confuse the viewers into believing that the reason why James Harden is on a team with a better record than LeBron James's team is because his team is also filled with a bunch of all-stars. Maybe I can confuse them into believing that. No, sir. In all actuality, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers who were supposed to have a star-studded team throughout this season, but because LeBron did not know how to implement them into the LeBron James system, they had to be jettisoned.
That's James Harden. That award is called the standings. That's why Houston has the best record. They already have an award for that. You're the #1 seed.
Yes, and normally when you're the #1 seed and your best player is having a transcendent season, you get the MVP award, especially when you're playing in the tougher conference. I'm trying to figure out, and a lot of the LeBron James superfans like to use the argument of, well, if LeBron James and James Harden switch teams, would the Cleveland Cavaliers have the same record? Well, I'd like to think that they would have the same record at the very least if James Harden was on the Cleveland Cavaliers. If for no other reason, he would add a new dynamic to the offense of being able to stretch the floor. Beyond that, his team is going to win at least 10 to 15 more games than LeBron James's team, and his team is in a tougher conference. All they've done is add one player, and once again, the Houston Rockets had a better record than the Cleveland Cavaliers had this year or last year without Chris Paul on the team. So what was the excuse for last year? Don't tell me that that he's on a star-studded team, because once again, he's the only all-star on that team.
That's what Chris Paul's your teammate. You have Capella and all these guys. Eric Gordon, that is great.
How many all-star games have Eric Gordon and Clint Capella made? I'll wait.
Great coach, a system, the whole thing, great GM. That's the standings. They have that already. The Cavs are 4 seed. This is an individual award. Who is the best player?
It's an individual award based on what you do for your team, because basketball is a team game. How did this become about LeBron James? This is supposed to be about what Russell Westbrook refused to acknowledge about James Harden. I tell you, these LeBron James superfans, boy.
That's LeBron James every year. And Westbrook didn't even just mean maybe it's LeBron, maybe it's Harden. Obviously, he's also talking about himself. Seems that...
Clearly. Now you're getting somewhere, sir.
Seems that way to me.
You know, it's interesting that you bring this up because I think, and not that this is a shining example, one that illuminates what I'm saying, but I'm going to try anyway because it's not that big of a deal, but it crystallizes the difference between you and I in terms of our thinking about this particular issue. Friday night, LeBron James was sensational. Sensational.
44 and 11.
In the second half. In the first half, they were getting annihilated by 30. What I'm saying is, let's compartmentalize it and just say it's not a game we're talking about, it's a season. There have been times when LeBron James has been absolutely sensational. There has been times, even though he got his numbers, where he was anything but. And the team was on that roller coaster ride and they were struggling. He'd get his numbers. He always gets his numbers because that's who he is.
Yes, that's who he is, and he plays in the LeBron James system. So he already knows that he's guaranteed to get his numbers because he's always going to have the ball in his hands. He makes all the decisions. That's how that goes. Russell Westbrook plays in that same style of offense, the Russell Westbrook system. Now, under Mike D'Antoni's system, whoever is the lead player basically gets to dictate the flow of the offense. So one can say that James Harden is playing in the James Harden system, but in reality, it's the Mike D'Antoni system. There are certain things that you have to be able to do to play in his system. You have to know how to move the ball quickly. You have to know how to make very quick decisions. So we can say that James Harden is kind of sort of playing in a system that is geared around him, but it's really Mike D'Antoni's system.
He has that kind of ability. That's what he brings to the table. But in terms of being a model of upward consistency and mobility, that has been James Harden throughout this year. The kind of things that you marveled at LeBron doing and the Cavaliers ultimately doing in moments is what Houston has consistently done from start to finish.
Absolutely.
Throughout this year, and the one element of consistency that has been there has been James Harden. It is undeniable, and that's how I look at him this year. It's not a matter.
Now, both Westbrook and Steph Curry played very good defense there. But great offense is going to beat great defense all the time.
Out of him, even though he's a better shooter, and he's a better three-point shooter, and he's a better free throw shooter. Overall, of course, he's not LeBron James. But Cleveland has been on a roller coaster ride, and at times so has LeBron, even when he got his numbers. And I'm saying to you...
Thank you, sir. That month of January, LeBron was not good. He was relatively bad for an entire month, a month and change, up until the trading deadline.
That hasn't been the case with James Harden.
I don't think we see that differently. In other words, sometimes on this show, people see two people butting heads because you have your opinion, I have mine, and we just disagree about it, we argue about it. That doesn't mean I don't see any arguments on James Harden's side of the ledger. Okay, there are arguments for James Harden. There's evidence for James Harden that I would not dispute. The consistency, even if he is plugged into a better system with better players.
Well, here's what's wrong with that argument, Max Kellerman, because number one, you are trying to marginalize James Harden's output by constantly trying to encapsulate it in the system that he's in. And that point is only marginally relevant for the simple fact that James Harden arguably could have won an MVP award in 2015 when he had Kevin McHale as his coach. Last year, he had no Chris Paul, and he was runner-up as MVP again. Max Kellerman is trying to act as if James Harden is Steve Nash, like he's someone who was a very good player who became MVP caliber only when he got Mike D'Antoni. James Harden was MVP caliber back in 2015 under Kevin McHale.
And that makes him a better player. He still deserves credit for being a better player.
Especially when the system evolves around him.
Sure, absolutely. And he's not alienating teammates that result in trades and all that stuff. I do take that into consideration. I'm saying even taking that into consideration, there's just more evidence for LeBron.
And I'm saying
he's finishing in the top half of the East. He has worse teammates. He hasn't missed any games.
Normal LeBron James super fan rambling. He just stated, or just admitted, that LeBron James is the one who alienated many of his teammates. So how could you come back and say that LeBron has worse teammates when he's the reason why those new teammates were brought in? Oh boy.
His numbers are just as good, if not better.
Well, his offensive numbers are better than James Harden's. by a tad. Really only because he's more proficient. But overall, James Harden has meant more to his team than LeBron has meant to his team, as strange as that may sound. Why is that? How do you know that? His team is going to have almost 20 more wins than LeBron James's team.
The best player in the game, he passes the eyeball test. I'd rather have him than Harden on my team, so would you. I mean, but it's not by any measure. By some measures, like the one you just pointed out, you prefer Harden. But when you weigh it in the balance, who do you want on your team to make your team the best? Give me LeBron on my...
It depends on the system you're running, sir. It depends on the system you're running. This is not a video game. In real life, teams run systems. Now, if you're going to ask LeBron James to run the Mike D'Antoni system, he may not look as good as James Harden looks. Believe it or not. I know that you guys think that LeBron created the earth and everything in it and then rested on the seventh day. But no, LeBron has his faults. And he's best in a system that centers around him. That's why he had his share of issues his first year in Miami. And it wasn't until Dwayne Wade divested control of the team over to him that they became championship caliber.
Again, if we're sitting there and saying who's the best player in the world, there have been plenty of times when guys have been the best player in the world, but they went through a bad month, for example. I'm just saying hypothetically. I'm saying if you went through a bad month and the other guy didn't, and he's been more of a model of consistency. I'm saying he's been more of a model of consistency. Let's say, for example, you had 3 good months and he had 6, but we all know you the better player. It doesn't negate the fact that for this particular regular season, even if I would want that guy in the postseason, even if I knew that guy was an overall better player, it doesn't make you the MVP.
So you put Harden on the Cavs with that supporting cast, the coaching staff, everything. Put LeBron on the Rockets with that supporting cast, coaching staff, everything. You think the Cavs just got better or worse?
No, I don't think the Cavs... First of all, nobody gets worse with LeBron. I'm never implying that. What I'm simply saying...
I'm trying to figure out how they're able to discern who will get better or worse when the Cleveland Cavaliers have never had the best record in the National Basketball Association since LeBron has been there. Are you trying to imply that LeBron has played with bums since he's gotten back to Cleveland in 2014? Kevin Love is a first ballot Hall of Famer. People might not like that, believe that, or acknowledge that. It's okay. Kyrie Irving at 25 years old is a 5-time All-Star and an NBA champion. He is trending towards the Hall of Fame. LeBron played with 2 other Hall of Famers in Miami, and if you want to count Ray Allen, even though he was in his declining years, that's a 3rd Hall of Famer. LeBron has had his share of teammates that he's played with. Now, he has led the regular season in victories, I believe, 3 times. 2 of his last 3 seasons in Cleveland, and of course the 2013 season when Miami won somewhere in the 60s. I believe they won 66 games that season. Since he's gotten back to Cleveland, they've never led the league in victories, and he's had his share of help on that team. So you cannot tell me that he is certifiably the best player in the NBA just based off of the impact that he would have. That's why I state that there is a debate. There's an argument over who's the most impactful player. I would still have LeBron as the best player, but as far as impact, meaning does what you do result in victories based off of how well you fit into the system of the team? It's not as simple as these two are trying to make it out to be. When you have a Steph Curry and you fit him into the Steve Kerr system, that's a perfect fit. James Harden, Steve Nash into the Mike D'Antoni system, that's a perfect fit. Michael Jordan into the Phil Jackson system, that's a perfect fit. Every once in a while, transcendent players find a system and a coach that creates a perfect fit for them. LeBron James, because he's so obsessed with his own understanding of how the basketball game should look, he will never find a perfect system for him because in his mind, the perfect system is what he generates. So that's why it's really not proper for people to try to guesstimate what he would do on other teams if he were to switch places with another player. If you were to switch LeBron with Steph Curry, the Golden State Warriors would not be the same team. They just wouldn't. But if you were to ask Max Kellerman or any of these other LeBron James superfans, they would tell you, oh, no, they'd become better. They'd win 75 games in a regular season. No, they wouldn't.
What he's saying is that this particular regular season, James Harden has been better more consistently than LeBron James.
Listen, this is what's happening.
He deserves
what's happening with
more.
Harden happened to Karl Malone, happened to Charles Barkley in Jordan's heyday. It's like, you can make a good enough argument for him, and what are we going to give the same dude the MVP every year?
Karl Malone won one, Barkley
And they shouldn't have. And they shouldn't have.
Guys, James.
The distance between Michael Jordan and the other great players in his era was discernible. The distance between LeBron James and the other great players in his era is far less discernible than the distance between Michael Jordan and the great players of his era. You had certain players like Hakeem Olajuwon who started to scrape the bottom of Michael's shoes in regards to greatness and ability to dominate in a way that resulted in victories and championships. But in the LeBron James era, you've had Tim Duncan, you've had Kobe Bryant, you had the vestiges of Shaquille O'Neal in the 2010s, you've had Steph Curry, you've had Kevin Durant, you've had players who have been able to grab the baton from LeBron. No one was able to grab the baton from Jordan in the 90s. So they keep trying to synchronize Jordan and LeBron, and they're just not equivalent.
James Harden first in points, third in assists. Westbrook did that last year, and he won MVP. So we shall see. But it.
Yes, and Westbrook's team did not win 65, 66 games like James Harden's team has done this year. But anyway, I just wanted to make this video because I found Westbrook's comments to be very revelatory in regards to his mindset and the trickle-down effect that it has on his team because he is so self-absorbed. It's almost comical. But anyway, peace.